Okay, we're ready to go. It's a pleasure to be here with you today and to say welcome to our program, Solving the Identity Theft Dilemma. I'm Rick Stecker, your moderator today. Usually I work as a professional business coach and author, but I'm also an authorized agent for Legal Shield. And as it sometimes happens in events like this, the person who was supposed to be here today had an emergency. So I'm the next man up. And hopefully you stick with me, and I'll try to keep us moving along and in the right direction. The information we have for you today is highly important. It's even critical. We're talking about solving the identity theft dilemma. It's mind-boggling how pervasive this problem has become. Yet today we're going to show you a way to save the day, a way to be the solution for your customers, for your employees, and for yourselves. As we get going here, we'll have all your mics muted to start out, but I'll also be monitoring the chat box. So if you have questions, go ahead and type them in. We'll try to answer them as we go along. So let's get started. We developed this program specifically for ICBA member banks, and we'll tell you more about that in a moment. But first, it's my honor to introduce you to Steve Steffke.
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate that. And first of all, I want to welcome everybody and thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to our program and learn a little about what we're about. Again, my name is Steve Steffke. I'm a National Accounts Director with the BJM Group, Certified Identity Theft Risk Management Specialist and the Group Specialist. We've been part of the ICBA for a few months now. We became members primarily to bring this answer to community banks and the banking system. A little bit about my background so you know who you're talking to. I've got over 35 years of business ownership, more than that in management. I've owned and operated a fairly substantial transportation business. We had hundreds of employees, multiple state operations, and I've also been in small business. I've had a couple of businesses where I've had just a handful of employees. Over the last 15 years, I've been focused primarily in legal services and identity theft protection business. One of the things that I learned and brings us to this program, when I was in ownership, it was what I didn't know that got me in trouble. And one of the things that helped me be successful was I was able to find those coaches, those leaders, those people with the answers so that I could learn and develop. Well, let's get going with our program. We've got three primary purposes today that we want to get through in a few minutes. First of all is understanding what identity theft is really all about. I think we're all familiar with the Target data breach, and we can't have paid attention to the news the last few weeks without hearing about Heartbleed. And without getting into any of the details, what we know from Heartbleed is that nobody's information, their personally identifiable or non-public information, is safe. Today's about transformation. It's about transforming what you know about identity theft and to give you an accurate perspective of the real dangers and the impact of identity theft on the victims and on your businesses. Really, it's not going away. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Matter of fact, the FBI just recently told banks, told all of us to get ready for more Target-type data breaches. The next purpose of our program today is being the solution. We're going to bring you a solution so you can be the hero, so you can be the leader in your community, being able to help your employees, your customers, and your community. Identity theft is just so complex. We don't think that anyone can fight it alone. So we've got an answer that can help you have their backs. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about creating an income stream, taking a negative and turning it into a positive. I guess it's no real secret that over the last few years, they have not been real kind. They have not been banner years to the financial industry, and especially the community banks. So we've got an answer to help generate a potential new income stream. Identity theft has been called the crime of the century. Just a couple of statistics. Identity theft has been the #1 consumer complaint to the Federal Trade Commission for the last 14 years. Just recently, Secret Service announced that identity theft now costs far more than all of the property crimes combined. And in a recent news release from the ICBA, they stated that the target data breach cost the nation's community banks more than $40 million, primarily in issuing new cards. Got a short video here that we'd like to share with you. A little bit about Bo Carlisle, who can tell you what it's like to be a victim of identity theft.
Hi, my name is Bo Carlisle. I'm going to share my identity theft story with you. There were 300 people that had ended up with my identity. It got sold through a flea market from the kid that actually broke into my car. My identity had been stolen. I discovered it on December 21st, 2006 while coming home from a business meeting. During that process, I was pulled over by someone I actually knew, a local cop at our church, and he said, I'm going to let you go, but let me run your license and I'll be back. And just a real routine, had a tail light out on the car and nothing big, and he's going to let me fix it. When the officer asked me told me that I had 47 felonies and 82 misdemeanors, I basically asked him, I said, can you allow me one thing? Can you give me one phone call? And he's like, this late at night? If you can get somebody this late at night, I'll pull my chief out of bed and he'll come up here. So I pick up the phone, call and speak to my law firm in the state of Texas. He then proceeds at the same time to call the other law firms from New Mexico, Arizona, California, Oregon, and Washington State. Got them on the phone. They didn't have a problem helping me with my issue. By that happened, the chief shows up and he's like, wait a minute, you're on the phone with 6 attorneys and it's dark. It's 10:30 here. It's got to be at least 8:30 there on the West Coast. I was like, yeah, it's that later, and they're on the phone trying to help me and trying to prove to you guys not to lock me up. So I was allowed to go to the office on Tuesday. We worked on everything through Christmas. On Tuesday, went into the precinct or whatever, and the chief was there, and he's like, wow, your attorneys work fast. And I was like, I told you it wasn't me, and for once, it really wasn't me. And the attorneys, went to bat for me. Within 2 weeks, they'd fully restored my identity. The peace of mind that the attorneys helped me through Legal Shield was that they were able to establish a number direct to the state district attorney to help me in the future if something were to arise from being a victim of identity theft. I couldn't imagine what I would have done without them. It was just a process. I can't explain it in words. It's all through life you're always you're accused of things. You're now found you're proven guilty before you even get a chance to go to trial. Well, that's how identity theft works. You're guilty and you have to prove yourself innocent. I was completely helpless, but I knew in the back of my mind that Legal Shield was always there. The value that the chief of police saw from the service. He saw exactly how the attorneys handled themselves in his office, and he said, is this available? Can my officers get this? You can offer this as a benefit to your employees, and it resulted in the entire department getting our service. My wife, through this whole process, she was nervous for a while, but then when she realized what they did and how much they worked for me and how fast they were able to do everything, it was just, it made her a complete believer in what the service is going to do and what it can do and what it's possible. And now knowing, our identity is protected, not only in just my driver's license, but the other areas as well. So.
Steve, as you know, the story in that video is just one of untold thousands of similar stories. As a matter of fact, I have my own identity theft story. This happened to me a few years ago before the issue really became so prevalent, but it's significant nonetheless. One day I got a call from one of my credit card companies asking me if I had just bought a car using my card in New Zealand. The purchase was so way out of line for me that my credit card company had no problem taking it off my record. But maybe I should never set foot in New Zealand ever. Yet you've told me so many times how identity theft is not just a credit card and financial issue. I know there's a lot more to it than that. Can you fill us in?
You bet, Rick. And for our attendees, that's the reason that we use this particular video. Bo Carlisle is a real person. He's not an actor, and he could be one of your customers. He could be one of your employees. And his story really focuses on that identity theft goes way beyond the financial impact, way beyond credit and credit card issues. Now, some of the salient points in his story are they found out 300 people had his information and were using his information. It was sold, his information was sold through a flea market. And there were warrants for 47 felony counts and 82 misdemeanor counts out there for him in over 5 states. Probably one of the most important issues, though, is what Bo said about identity theft is one of those crimes where you're guilty and you have to prove yourself innocent. And so if this does happen to one of your employees or one of your customers, how do they deal with it? Where do they go from there? As you can see on the slide that's up there right now, identity theft does manifest itself in many different ways besides just the credit and financial issues. And one of the things, victims often face many issues such as problems securing a loan, debt collectors, harassment, problems with the IRS, false tax returns, difficulties obtaining a clean background check, and costly legal fees. So what we wanted to do very briefly, though, is give you a better picture of what is involved in identity theft beyond just the financial identity theft issues, which are important. And being in the financial industry, being banks, you understand the impact it has on your customers, it has on your bank. But financial identity theft is only 17% of the problem. Beyond that, one of the first ones we're going to look at, because it's relatively new and it's growing, is children's identity theft. Babies are being born, and within weeks of their birth, their Social Security numbers are being stolen. There are computer programs out there now that can project Social Security numbers. And the real problem with children's identity theft is that it's not often discovered for years and years and years. It's possible that a child is having a record established and they don't know anything about it until they're well into their teens. Often the first time that an individual or his or her parents discover that their identity has been stolen and that there is a whole dossier out there is when they go to get that temporary driver's license. Social Security identity theft, we've heard a lot about it. It's been in the news quite a bit. It's costing our government billions of dollars, and it's costing millions of people a lot of time and heartache because somebody steals their information, their Social Security number, files tax returns in their name prior to them doing it, get the refunds, and then when the victim, the real taxpayer, files their return, it's rejected, and they spend, in many cases, years trying to get that cleaned up. Medical identity theft is becoming a huge issue. And that's when somebody steals your personal information to gain access to the healthcare system. One of the reasons it's so important and devastating to the victim is that when somebody becomes a victim of identity theft, the person that stole their information is getting serviced, and all of their personal health information is going into the victim's medical file. As an example, a story that we're familiar with involves a young mother of 4 in California. Her name is Andrea Sachs. Mother of 4 children. She hadn't had a baby in the last 2 years. Her youngest was 2. And she got a call from Child Protective Services wanting to know why she abandoned her baby in the hospital. And she said, I haven't had a baby. And when they get into the story, it becomes very complicated. But a woman got her information, gained access to the healthcare system to deliver a baby. She was an addict. She had a Coke baby, and shortly after the baby was born, she abandoned it in the hospital. So the hospital and law enforcement go after Andrea and say, we're coming to get the rest of your kids. You're an unfit mother. And it takes years and tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. Major bills follow her. Those are the kinds of things that victims have to deal with on a regular basis when they become a victim of medical identity theft. And then one of the biggest problems is that once somebody uses your information to gain access to health care, their personal information goes into your health file, your medical information file. And if they've got a different blood type, if they've got allergies, you're using medication they're not using, those things get messed up and can be potentially very devastating. Driver's license identity, we won't spend a lot of time on this. We're familiar with it, going back to our friend Bo in the video before. That's how his identity was stolen. Somebody broke into his car, got his driver's license, sold his information 300 times. Our driver's license have become our de facto identification card here in the United States. Somebody uses that, they can leave a mess for people to deal with later. Finally, criminal and character identity theft. Obviously, it's all criminal, but this type of identity theft focuses primarily on when somebody uses somebody else's personal information to commit crimes. And then the victim is dealing with, again, got to prove yourself innocent. You're guilty until you do that. The ramifications of that. Bo had many warrants for his arrest out there. But what we want you to think about as business owner, as a business executive, is what is the risk of some of this to your business? As bankers, we want you to think about if this individual was a C-level officer, a CFO, COO, a key community leader. They're one of the main players on your staff. If an arrest warrant were issued for them, the news media would be all over it. Can you imagine the impact that would have on this person's career, on his or her life, on their position with your business or your bank? And then how about the impact on your business? Headline in the paper, headline on the evening news, ABC State Bank CFO arrested for whatever, fraud, pedophilia. It could be anything. And it has happened. This is not just a hypothetical. As a result of identity theft, a C-level executive in a bank was arrested for armed robbery. They were fired on the spot, even though they hadn't been charged yet or even tried. The bank couldn't take a chance. It took the individual a lot of time, a number of years, a lot of money, and their career was ruined, even though ultimately it was proven to be a case of identity theft. Carlisle said, identity theft is a crime where you are guilty and you have to prove yourself innocent. We all have, or as business people, we all have key insurance for our key employees. What are we doing to help protect these employees from the devastating impact of identity theft?
So, Steve, in the overall picture, then, financial identity theft represents only 17% of the total, and the rest, a whopping 83%. What I see happening here is that there's a lot of vulnerability out there, no matter how secure anyone says their systems are. It's more than we know, and we're all exposed. It sounds like a full-time job just to keep ourselves protected. So identity theft is, first and foremost, a legal issue. All that said, what's the solution?
Well, Rick, before we get into specific solution, one of the biggest issues with identity theft is the mess that it makes of an individual's life. We've had many stories where victims have talked about the biggest problem they've had is the mass amount of time and legal costs it took to restore their good name and their credit. Victims, including people who have been who have had arrest warrants issued in their names, reported emotional scars similar to those that victims of violent crime reported. Victims claim it's the most personally invasive and financially ruinous crime that they've ever experienced. And we had one couple who were victims of identity theft that said, other than the death of their parents, it's the most traumatic thing that had ever happened in their lives. So the best answer is complete wall of security. We've got to protect ourselves, but we've also got to be prepared to deal with the situation when it happens. We live in a do-it-yourself world, and a lot of people say, well, if something happens, I can handle it myself, and they probably can. If they did it on their own, they'd have to file multiple police reports probably, go to the Federal Trade Commission website, download and read Take Charge, Fighting Back Against Identity Theft, which is the definitive guide, gives everybody all of the information they need to do it themselves. They need to contract all major credit repositories. They follow all of the instructions. They need to do this multiple times because it happens again and again. They would use the FTC ID theft affidavit when disputing unauthorized counts, file complaints with the FTC, contact multiple government agencies, law enforcement agencies, financial institutions, creditors, allow at least 157 hours, and allocate a minimum of $1,200 to cover out-of-pocket expenses. And then be prepared for it to happen again and again, multiple times. So what we really need to do is be prepared for something like that to happen. We need a system to let us know that there's something going on. And that's where the monitoring services come in. There are several identity theft products out there, identity services out there, and they talk about the credit monitoring, which is important. But credit monitoring does not stop identity theft. There's no real way to guarantee anybody that we can stop it, they can be protected from it, but it gives us the early warning. So monitoring services are important. But in addition to that, we have to be prepared to deal with it, and that's where access to legal counsel and full restoration come in. And basically, that's what we do. That's what separates us from everything else that's out there in the marketplace today. We fix it. In order to understand really how that works, we have to understand the difference between reimbursement, resolution, and restoration. When you're listening to ads about these different services, you've got to find out what they are. Many of us have heard from our insurance company, for a small rider, you can insure against identity theft. That's reimbursement, typical insurance. You become a victim of identity theft. You do all of the work I mentioned just a minute ago. All of your out-of-pocket expenses you turn into the insurance company and they reimburse you. And then there's resolution. And that's where you have a service. They tell you you're a victim of identity theft and they send you a do-it-yourself help guide and say, here's a 1-800 number. Go ahead, got any questions, give us a call and we'll try and help you resolve the issue. And then finally, there's full restoration. Restoration is when you have an individual who really knows what they are doing, who's done it before, do all of that work that I mentioned before for you, and also having access to legal representation. We help people all the time, people like your customers and your employees. So let me tell you just a little bit about who we are, who we represent. Legal Shield is a 42-year-old pioneer, and we're the leader in the legal services industry. They have a proprietary system of provider law firms. We cover 49 states and 4 Canadian provinces, and we have a network of attorneys, more than 6,900 top-rated attorneys nationwide. And then we partner with Kroll Advisory Solutions. Since we're talking to people in the banking industry, we're sure that most of you are probably familiar with Kroll, the world's leading risk consulting company. Do background checks, security plans, all kinds of other things that I'm sure you're familiar with. They have offices in 6 continents, 33 countries, 65 cities. Their clientele is primarily Fortune 500. And they have more than 2,200 licensed investigators to perform full identity restoration for the victims, for our members.
Well, Steve, that tells me I could use Kroll if I ever go to New Zealand, so I'll keep that in mind. With all the resources that are available, there's a lot of ways that Legal Shield and Kroll can have your back. And it looks like their purpose is to move the needle on the threat meter well into the safety zone.
You're right, Rick. And that's what we do. We move the needle by having a solution, by having customers, employees, having their back when they become a victim of identity theft. It's time to really address the issue. We haven't, as a society, really haven't been dealing with it because it's not going away and it's going to get worse before it gets better. What we're talking about here with moving the needle, having the solutions, we're talking about identity security. We offer the premier identity theft solution in the marketplace. It's all about education and it's all about having our members back. After consulting with banking experts and industry veterans, we've developed a program specifically designed to help ICBA member banks protect their valued customers and employees while generating a recurring monthly revenue. The banking industry is positioned to build trust, deepen customer relationships, and capitalize on consumer demand by offering these services to their customers, both retail and commercial. To us, it just makes sense for financial institutions to be proactive by partnering with their customers and their employees to detect and respond to all 6 types of identity theft and to stop and clear up the resulting fraud and the devastating impact that much sooner.
Well, obviously, for all of our attendees out there, we want to tell you more about what Legal Shield and Kroll can do for you. But it would be difficult, if not impossible, to do that here. So, to properly fill in the blanks, we need to talk. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to follow up with you to set up a meeting. We'll be sending you an email shortly to explore the possibilities about when and where. At the same time, we're inviting you, if you want to get ahead of the game, to call Steve directly at the number you see here, 715-355-9920. And for those who might be listening on the phone, that number again is 715-355-9920. Or send him an email at this address, ssteffke@charter.net. And again, if you're on the phone, it's ssteffke@charter.net. We anticipate that the meeting will take no more than 20 to 30 minutes. The advantages to you are many: protecting your customers, your employees, and yourself, and considering the possibility of that revenue stream. We look forward to talking to you in the near future to update you on this excellent opportunity. So finally, until next time, this is Rick Stecker on behalf of Steve Steffke, Legal Shield, and Kroll Advisory, saying so long for now.